You're tuned into Collateral Damage, the military families FAP and IDC leave behind. Voices have been altered, because in this system, honesty has a price. Let's jump into military IDC/CRC exposed. JAGs reveal flawed system and command influence.
We've been talking about the Family Advocacy Program and its flaws, as well as the IDC process. Today, we're going to take a look from inside that process. For military families, few panels carry as much weight and, frankly, as much anxiety as the Incident Determination Committee, or IDC.
Yeah, it's a really critical point in the system.
Think of it as, well, the military's internal administrative court for allegations of abuse could be emotional, physical, whatever, where decisions get made that can just fundamentally alter lives. Now, on paper, the IDC is designed to be this bastion of oversight, accountability, and due process.
Right, the ideal.
Exactly. It's meant to ensure fairness and protection for everyone involved. But as our sources reveal, the reality often paints a picture of a deeply flawed system, one that really struggles to deliver on that promise.
And what's truly compelling, I think, from the insights we've gathered is that the problems aren't just, isolated incidents or maybe individual failings. They seem to be deeply structural. So today we're going to dive into how this IDC process actually operates on the ground, why it's maybe inherently problematic from a design perspective, and crucially, what insiders, people who've actually sat on these committees, including legally trained judge advocate general officers, or JAG, what they've exposed about its profound failures, their candid observations provide some pretty sobering validation of what many families already feel, that the IDC is kind of broken from the inside out.
Yeah. So today, we're really going to dig into these revelations with you to understand the true weight of the decisions made within this system and what they really mean for the military community. Okay, let's unpack this. So let's begin with the stated ideal, because honestly, it sounds so robust on paper. The formal purpose of the IDC is to review these case files, right? Meticulously prepared and presented by Family Advocacy Program staff, the FAP. And just for context, FAP is the military's main program for preventing and responding to domestic violence, child abuse, offering support, intervention, that kind of thing.
Right. They're the ones usually bringing the case forward.
Exactly. So the IDC's job is then to vote on whether an allegation meets criteria for abuse under the Department of Defense definitions. In theory, this should be a really rigorous, exhaustive review of all the available documentation. We're talking detailed interviews, therapy notes, maybe medical reports, any other collateral evidence.
Everything they can gather.
Right. The intent is clear. Ensure fairness, balance, accountability for military families facing these often life-shattering accusations. And those DoD criteria, they can be quite broad, covering everything from emotional neglect right up to severe physical harm. Each has its own specific thresholds, evidentiary requirements. It's not just a simple checklist.
No, definitely not. And the committee itself is typically a multidisciplinary panel, which again, sounds pretty comprehensive. You'd expect to see command representation, maybe a commanding officer alongside a medical officer, or perhaps a behavioral health provider, then a judge advocate general, the JAG officer serving as a legal advisor, and of course the FAP staff presenting all the case details. It's meant to bring all this diverse expertise to bear on these incredibly sensitive situations.
Sounds good in theory.
It does. But the truly startling revelation here is how that rigorous, fair process can quickly veer off course. And this brings us to a critical point. Why does a system designed with apparently such good intentions seem to build in its own problems? Our sources point to a really concerning reality where decisions are often made far too casually, sometimes with very little meaningful review.
Casually?
Yeah, and where members who might actually want to raise legitimate concerns find themselves effectively silenced by command influence. It just highlights this fundamental disconnect between the stated purpose and the actual lived experience within that room.
And what's really compelling from the insights we've gathered is that these aren't just like individual failings. They seem inherent to the IDC's very design. The sources reveal that the structure of the IDC itself creates fundamental problems, almost guaranteeing these issues will crop up. Let's start with the first major flaw they identified: command's disproportionate sway. The presence of command representation, often the service member's actual commander, means their voice doesn't just matter. It often carries the most weight in the room, period. And this isn't just about, someone having a strong opinion. It's about how that hierarchical military structure can silently but powerfully compel other panel members to align with command's perspective.
even if it goes against their own judgment.
Even if their legal or medical judgment might suggest otherwise.
Yeah.
It creates this kind of chilling effect where objective assessment can really take a back seat to, say, organizational cohesion or just not rocking the boat.
Right. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, we see a crucial second flaw that directly impacts the families caught in this system: lack of transparency. Families are simply not told how their cases were deliberated. They don't get any insight into the discussions, the arguments made, or the specific evidence that was weighed most heavily.
So they just get the verdict.
Pretty much. And they have no real-time recourse to challenge mischaracterizations or misunderstandings of their situation while it's happening. This means families aren't just denied due process at a critical moment, but they're left in this awful emotional limbo, unable to understand the basis of a decision that could absolutely shatter their lives.
Leaving them without closure or any clear path forward, imagine trying to move on, to heal, when you don't even know why a particular decision was made about your family. It must be excruciating.
Exactly. That lack of knowing why is incredibly damaging.
And adding to that, a third significant flaw revealed by insiders is the pervasive informal culture that often seems to permeate these IDC meetings. Rather than the careful, focused adjudication process you'd expect for such grave matters, insiders have reported that discussions are frequently rushed.
Rushed. How so?
Well, it seems like sometimes more attention is given to personal schedules, like we need to wrap this up, or the convenience of the panel members, than to the incredibly serious implications for the lives impacted by these decisions.
That's concerning. One JAG officer actually recounted how some meetings felt like a race against the clock, with members literally checking their watches and pushing to conclude quickly. And this isn't just about efficiency. It risks real superficiality, where complex situations get boiled down to maybe just bullet points without adequate discussion or thought.
Yeah, the gravity of the accusations, the trauma involved for families, it sounds like it's often sidelined in favor of just keeping the meeting brief. Imagine your own life-altering situation, your future, your family's future, possibly your career, all being discussed with one eye on the clock or, as we'll get to, someone's lunch plans. It really makes you wonder about the integrity of the outcomes and whether true justice can ever really be served in such an environment. This isn't just a procedural error. It feels like a profound devaluation of the individuals and families right at the heart of these determinations.
Absolutely. It feels disrespectful, frankly.
So what does this all mean for those who are actually in the room, particularly the JAG officers? Their very role is to provide essential legal guidance. These are trained professionals tasked with upholding the law. The insider testimonies from our sources are incredibly powerful and, frankly, pretty disheartening. One JAG officer described feeling that the entire IDC system was ethically wrong.
Wow, ethically wrong. That's strong language from a JAG.
It is, and that's not a sentiment easily dismissed by someone with their professional background. Yet they openly admitted that voicing dissent, especially in the presence of command, was nearly impossible.
So it's not just a matter of disagreeing politely. It's about navigating this deeply hierarchical culture where challenging a superior can have direct, tangible impacts on your career progression, your reputation. This imbalance of power, they recounted, meant that legal expertise was effectively muted, just silenced, leaving the commander's perspective to dominate the outcomes, often without sufficient legal scrutiny. It really makes you wonder what the point of having a JAG officer there even is, if their voice can be so easily overshadowed or just ignored.
Right. And this leads us to perhaps the most shocking anecdote shared by an insider, recalling how IDC meetings often devolved into conversations about lunch plans. While military families waited, probably in excruciating fear for these life-altering determinations, panel members were reportedly treating the cases almost like a side task. Check the boxes quickly before moving on to casual discussions.
Lunch plans? Seriously?
Yeah. That image of lunch plans being discussed during such serious deliberations with families waiting in fear, it really sticks with you, doesn't it? It just underscores how little real weight was sometimes given to the cases themselves, and maybe how desensitized the process can become for those inside it.
It really does. And this raises an important question, a critical one. Why do even trained legal officers, whose whole professional integrity often requires them to uphold legal standards, why do they refrain from objecting in such a flawed system? It's not a simple matter of individual choice. It seems deeply rooted in this complex web of institutional and cultural pressures that create a really powerful incentive for silence.
Okay, so what are those pressures?
Well, first, there are significant career consequences. A JAG who openly challenges a commander risks being viewed as insubordinate, or maybe worse, not a team player. In a profession where your advancement, getting desirable assignments, future opportunities, it's all directly tied to evaluations from superiors, right? So
Yeah.
dissent carries a very real personal and professional cost.
That's huge. It's not just about an awkward meeting. It's potentially derailing years of dedicated service and future aspirations. That's a heavy burden for any individual to carry.
It's a massive calculation, unfortunately, that many feel compelled to make. Then there's the structural power imbalance itself. Although JAGs are present to provide legal guidance, our sources explicitly note their advisory role is, quote, easily overridden by command authority.
So it's built right in.
It's built into the system. This isn't just a perception. This can make speaking up seem almost futile, right? Because their legal expertise might make little tangible difference in the final outcome, while still potentially damaging those crucial professional relationships. It kind of fosters a sense of learned helplessness,
Why bother?
basically.
Yeah.
Furthermore, there's the normalization of silence. The culture within the IDC, as described by these insiders, accepts these casual, maybe surface-level reviews as just good enough. So for new or junior members entering this environment, objecting to this established norm requires exceptional courage. It means standing out, potentially being labeled as difficult, and often results in professional isolation within the unit. The path of least resistance just becomes the path of silence.
So it's a self-perpetuating cycle then, where new members are quickly socialized into a culture where asking hard questions isn't really encouraged.
Precisely. And finally, there's a pervasive lack of accountability. IDC decisions are often final within that local command structure, with very limited avenues for higher review. Our sources note that because there is essentially no external review or sanction for negligence, members feel little institutional obligation to raise concerns or push for more rigorous processes. Without a mechanism for external scrutiny, the internal pressures for conformity just become overwhelmingly strong.
Yeah, it's clear this isn't just about individual moral failing, is it? It sounds like a system that fundamentally discourages accountability from within, creating this cycle of silence that allows these critical flaws to just persist unchecked. It paints a picture where the very structure intended to ensure justice inadvertently stifles it.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay, let's zoom out now and consider the inherent flaws that these insider accounts expose, and maybe most importantly, what this all means for the military families who are ultimately right at the center of these determinations.
Right. To summarize the core systemic issues identified, we really see command influence as not just a factor, but a major distorting problem. It skews the process right from the outset. It can lead to families not being evaluated objectively based on the facts. Instead, decisions might be driven by a focus on, say, preserving the command's image or avoiding administrative burden.
Less paperwork, less hassle for the command.
Exactly. Rather than a truly objective evaluation of the evidence and what's best for the family involved, it stops being about finding the truth and becomes more about managing optics or convenience.
Which means that what should be an unbiased review becomes tainted by these extraneous organizational priorities. That's deeply concerning.
It is. Then there's the token legal input. JAG officers, despite their extensive training in law and ethics, are often reduced to being merely symbolic participants. Their expertise, as we've discussed, simply cannot meaningfully shape outcomes when the structure grants commanders such disproportionate authority. They essentially become observers rather than active participants in ensuring justice.
Just there to make it look legitimate, perhaps?
That's how some insiders described feeling. And this often leads directly to a rubber-stamped culture. Our sources indicate that the IDC frequently functions more as a formality, essentially preordaining outcomes. Cases are often pre-framed by FAP staff, maybe unintentionally biased, and the committee largely just affirms what has already been written down, rather than conducting a truly critical, independent analysis of the evidence presented.
So it's a process designed to appear thorough, but in practice it's often just a bureaucratic hoop to jump through.
That's the risk, yes. And of course the casual treatment of serious allegations. That reported fixation on lunch plans during deliberations, it's not just unprofessional, it profoundly trivializes the trauma that families are living through. It implies their pain, their fear, their entire future is somehow a minor inconvenience rather than the paramount concern it should be. That creates a deep and lasting sense of injustice for those seeking help or fair assessment.
Absolutely. And the consequences of these flaws for military families are severe and incredibly far-reaching. An IDC determination can lead to just devastating impacts on a service member's career, potentially including administrative separation.
Which can mean loss of benefits, pension.
Everything. It can force family separation, result in the denial of crucial support services like housing or even medical care, or inflict this lasting stigma of being labeled an offender within the military system, a label that follows them even after they leave service.
Yeah, the ripple effects are enormous. And when such life-altering decisions are made so casually, without meaningful, unbiased review, it's not just a procedural error, it's a systemic failure with a profound human cost. What's truly disheartening here is how a system explicitly designed as a safeguard to ensure fair determinations ends up failing its central mission so badly for some. It leaves countless families feeling unheard, misrepresented, and further silenced, especially for survivors who might already feel voiceless. And paradoxically, it can allow actual abusers to exploit the system's flaws to avoid accountability, simply because the process itself isn't robust enough to truly hold them responsible. It fundamentally undermines trust in the entire military justice and support system. It erodes the very foundation of care and accountability that should exist within that community.
Yeah. This deep dive really pulls back the curtain, doesn't it? On how complex and often frustrating institutional processes can become when critical human elements like accountability and transparency are compromised. The IDC, despite its really critical mission, seems plagued by these structural issues: disproportionate command influence, silenced legal input, and this casual internal culture that has devastating, life-altering consequences for military families.
And when decisions about abuse, which carry such profound weight and affect so many lives, are treated as little more than an inconvenience to be rushed through before lunch, well, the institution risks losing both its integrity and its fundamental ability to protect those it was truly meant to serve. It's just a stark reminder of the gap that can exist between good intentions and flawed execution in large systems.
It really is, and it leaves you with a final thought, maybe a provocative one. If institutions like the military, which value discipline, order, and honor above all else, can allow such a critical process to be influenced by convenience and unspoken pressures, what does that imply about the challenges of ensuring true justice and compassionate care in any large organization? And what responsibility do we all have maybe to look beyond those surface-level assurances to truly understand how these systems operate deep down? It really leaves you wondering, doesn't it?
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe as we have so many more stories to tell. This isn't about one person, it's about a broken system. Contact us if you'd like your story told.